What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. We're back. It's BobbyFi and my man Sheets, and we are going to be doing a Fanduel breakdown. We like to see our beautiful faces at first, so Sheets is going to call up his screen, and then we're going to get to it. Basically, we just did our DraftKings one, so check that out. It was a much longer, more in-depth version. Here, we're going more position by position because it's a very different game on Fanduel, obviously, than it is on DraftKings, and they sort of force you into builds which you kind of want to avoid. So let's get it started, man. We talked about our overall thoughts on the last video, so hopefully they watched that one. Let's talk about position by position right off the bat, unless there's one position you feel like you have to lock somebody in.
No, so I suspected when we were doing with the DraftKings, I suspected that when we got to FanDuel, I was thinking about whether you'd be able to get all three studs in. So we're going to see if we can do that. I didn't really try before we did the DraftKings video, so we'll see if we can, just to show you, to see if we can do that. But we'll go position by position because there is one really, at least one complete standout difference on FanDuel. So let's start with point guard. And I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of 5 guys kind of competing for my favorite status here. So I'll just kind of go through them. It's going to be either Trae Young or Malcolm Brogdon, Luka, Kyle Lowry, or actually Ish Smith. If I had to rank them, on FanDuel, I think Trae Young might end up being my favorite. So that might be where, I don't know, maybe Trae Young, but between Trae Young and Brogdon and I guess Doncic, but I don't know. Now I'm thinking about it. I really don't have much of an opinion between those four. Between Trae Young, Brogdon, Luka, and Lowry. So I guess I would defer on the side of ownership and see which one of them would be the lowest owned, I suppose. I presume that, I guess I'm not presuming anything, but I'm presuming that all of them are going to get some degree of ownership. What do you think as far as those plays? What do you think of the ownership of those guys?
Trae Young will be the highest owned,
okay,
followed by Luka, regardless of anything.
Okay.
And then you're going to get great plays like Brogdon and Lowry at under ownership and 2 other guys who are also – if you could take the FanDuel thing and just play these point guards, I would love it because I love Kemba Walker as a completely off-the-board play who no one –
Wow.
There is no reason not to love Kemba here, and no one's going to. And then you've got Jamal Murray. I absolutely love him. A ridiculously cheap Lonzo. Ridiculously cheap for what he's been doing and what he should be doing. It's a tough situation to where I don't even know if people are going to end up getting down to Brogdon. It's weird. There's a lot of good plays at point guard, and very few on the cheap side. But you have the Brogdon, Dunn, Holiday. If there's no Brogdon tier, and then IT is 41. There's a lot of guys who I could make good arguments for, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards Brogdon, Luka myself, but I do like Lonzo a ton, and I like Jamal Murray and Lowry a ton. So it's really, I'm really struggling with it. The good news is we've got the multi 150 today, so I can play a few lineups and do a few different things because I really like this point guard position, and I'm having trouble prioritizing.
What do you mean we have the multi 150? What does that mean?
There's the $150 buy-in. They've got a bunch of entries for 100K for first. Just a good tournament for a day like today because there's a lot of things that are going to happen that are tough, and you've got a lot of mispricing on FanDuel that makes it really easy to get in the studs. But then when you get into it, like, is it worth foregoing the 2,500 like for a discount for Trae? Like Trae, I expect to be one of the most popular players on DK, much less FanDuel. And FanDuel might keep his ownership lower on DK. He's just really too cheap, and so are all those guys I just mentioned. There's a lot of really, really strong plays.
Yeah, I looked at the quick ownership when I'm looking at it. Yeah, you're right. Trae Young is projecting to be at least for now, the highest owned of the point guards. And
I guess it's followed by Luka, right?
Yeah, but then it's the one I'm looking at is kind of close between Ball and even Ball for some reason and Brogdon.
Yeah, Ball because he's 6,300 and he should be 8,300.
Oh, well, there it is. Yeah, like I said, it's rough, man. It sounds easy, right? Just pick a guy that's going to have a great projection and nobody's going to play him. Yeah, okay, good luck with that.
Like you could get a bad game and get 30 out of Brogdon if he plays and get a regular game from Luka and get 60. And while that may not be the most optimal, like that's probably going to get you pretty close to what all these other guys are going to get you if they get them right. Like you still need, if that happens, basically, you need an average 45 plus from each of Kemba and Lowry or Kemba and Murray. Uh, they're all completely justifiable in a similar price range as a two-pair combination. Maybe paying up at both is going to be popular, but I still think it's viable because there's other places to go down. But for me personally, I'm just leaning a little bit more towards the Brogdon Luka thing. It's really hard for me to get over this pricing on Brogdon if he does play.
How did CJ McCollum do last night?
He was good, but not great.
Sure? Okay.
I think he was good. He ended up why?
Because I freaking played him, and because my daughter went to freaking Lehigh, and I think he busted. I think he didn't do anything for me.
What did he?
I'm going to go right back to Brogdon with my son going to Virginia. He's going to freaking kill me. All right, well, I'll play him though. I mean,
I don't know what he ended up at, but I thought he ended up with a decent 30-ish.
He could have.
I don't know actually.
It's all right because DeAndre Hunter did well for Virginia a couple of games ago, so we're good. We're good. All right, so the point guard position. I mean, I could make a case for 5 or 6 guys. You're going to have to, again, you got to kind of smack me around a little bit because I'm still just very, I start with the projections, then I kind of work out, whatever. You're going to have to talk me off of this because I just see Harden and McRae, presuming Beal doesn't play, is just so far ahead of all the other guys that you're going to have to kind of – now, again, I'm going to look at ownership in a second. I'm presuming that Harden's going to be, 10 zillion% owned. But, yeah, it looks like 50%. Ooh, but what's his name? McRae only looks like to be 10 or 15. Okay, so maybe that.
We don't have Beal yet, though. We don't have Beal.
Oh, right. That's probably true. Okay, yeah. So just from what I'm looking at, after that, then I'm presuming you're going to have to get, hopefully low own guys, but, you're going to have Josh Hart. You're going to have Evan Fournier, who's, again, he's not my favorite sexy type of play, but he's looking okay. Then Donovan Mitchell, who I'm not too thrilled about in that game environment. And then we're talking about, kind of overpriced guys like, well, I say overpriced, he's better here than DraftKings. Zach LaVine, he looks pretty good, actually. Not bad. Devontae Graham. I mean, we're kind of dropping down a little bit from there. So for me, the top 2 guys, assuming Beal doesn't play, I would probably lock in Harden and McRae and kind of just spread out elsewhere in general. Yeah. But if Beal is in, you're going to have to sell me on playing Beal for openers, and then the rest of shooting guard becomes kind of a war.
I wouldn't have to sell you. He's 7,900, and even when he's rested in the past, he hasn't come back from it missing any minutes. So I'm just not going to treat it as if it's anything other than a normal game for him, which, that might not be great. If he's 7,900, you could pretty much assure that Bradley Beal is going to be in my lineups. That's simple as that. But I don't mind any of the other guys around him either. I think that Mitchell and LaVine are both fine. I think LaVine is the preferred one I would choose, but I don't think I'm even going to go there. I think that going down, I really like Kevin Huerter. I like his price over here a ton at 5,700. He's averaging 8 whatever possible assists per game over his last 4, even though he only converting about 4 a game. But he's been shooting lights out. That's the one thing that's a little bit worrisome. It's hard to keep doing that. But his usage is also just it's up. And without a guy like Jabari in there, he's an interesting way to go if you're not going to play Trae Young. And I also think that RJ Barrett at 5K is worth a tournament shot. I know that sounds like a weird one, but these Knicks are going to have some usage without Julius Randle. And it should affect everyone down the line. If Marcus Morris is in or out, it's going to depend a lot. Let's just say Morris is out too. I mean, we might need to start even in a blowout, these guys are going to play minutes. So they're going to have a lot of usage in those minutes. And then another one, if you want to take a wild card shot on somebody that I think is actually very reasonable, would be if you're not going to play Josh Hart, to maybe take the shot on Gary Payton II. And it's just a weird way to go if there's no Beal. But mostly, I mean, look, it's Harden. It's hard not to play Harden. Harden is going to be, my guess, 75% owned, 70% owned in the big tournaments. I can't see how he's not. Can you? On FanDuel?
No.
It's just impossible, right? Like, is it possible that he even gets up to 85%? Possibly.
I don't think so. I
You
don't
don't
think
think
he gets
so?
up that. I don't think he gets up that high just because the you could play Luka and Giannis. You know what I mean? It's
No one wants
I
to
don't.
play Giannis with a GGD tag. He's going to be the unknown one if there's anyone.
No, I know that.
Although small forward is weaker, so it's a little bit weird.
Why is Randall not playing? What's his problem?
He's out. I think it's just a rest thing because it's back to
Personal.
back to Utah. Personal.
He's all sore that he didn't get the revenge that he wanted
At the Lakers. Anyway, it's an interesting position. I'm finding myself with a lot of Harden and Hart because I think you can play all three big guys, and that's my initial build. Took me to playing all three studs. If I think they're all going to be owned and all played together, I wouldn't be as interested. But I think there's a lot of ways to go that are going to make this not a common build. So we'll get into it when we get to the center position because I have some very strange thoughts there.
Okay. I want to ask you one other guy at the shooting guard position, only because, again, we brought him up on DraftKings. Kind of like a lower owned pivot to another guy we're going to get to later. Do you like Gary Harris on Fanduel at all or no?
I think that he's yes, I mean, like,
At 4,200?
I think he's fine. I think actually is a pretty good call. Like, him versus Hart is an interesting conversation. Yes, he's completely fine. I probably should have mentioned him sooner.
I mean, as a matter of fact, all these guys around Hart at 4,200 are kind of interesting. DiVincenzo, Redick, like you said, Gary Payton Jr. I don't know. It depends how chalky. I don't think Josh Hart's going to be that chalky, though. I don't know. I think these guys are going to soak up all. I really do. I think, especially if Beal's out.
Oh,
I think these guys are going to soak up all the ownership. I really think
it feels like it's starting to feel like I'm trying to fade Rodney McRae night. That's what I feel like. Oh, by the way, also, another weird shooting guard, the same thing. Like JJ Redick, like, again, he's 4,200. Like, that's another guy worth playing.
Yeah, that's what I just said. All these guys are around 4,200.
There's a lot of interesting options on this freaking slate, more than I thought at first, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go on to small forward, and it's actually kind of a war. Like there's no real standouts for me at small forward. Like, the top projected guy as far as everything else goes is actually Giannis. Okay. I didn't put him in this first build, but he's certainly not projected to be as good of a play as Harden is by a long shot, or even Luka. But he's actually close to Luka. But again, at much lower ownership than either of them, you're gonna it's gonna be a really good tournament play, as you were saying. And the other thing I would say, it's not like this. I don't know. It's not as if the small forward position is such a great position today. I don't know why.
It sucks.
I don't know why Giannis wouldn't actually get more ownership.
No, he should probably. That's what I was saying. Like, versus position, I guess it does suck. So maybe we'll see. Maybe Luka gets lower.
Yeah. So as far as these other guys go, I'll just read off kind of some names, all of whom kind of sound to me, from a value perspective, be similar. And you'd have to make an ownership call. Is OG Anunoby, going right back to him again at 4,700. Gordon Hayward at 6,500, significantly better than he is on DraftKings. Then, you start your Houston parade. You could go Daniel House at 4,400. You could go down to Eric Gordon at 4,200. You could go back to Washington and play Troy Brown if you want. Bojan Bogdanovic from Utah, Ingram. I hate to just throw all these names, and I wouldn't do it if I didn't think they were all really close. You know what I mean? So I think all of those guys you could find spots for. But again, if you're going to do that, I would try to find spots in correlated lineups and just really pick the lowest owned of all those guys if you can.
Yeah. So basically, I'm leaning in Anunoby and Giannis as my guys.
Okay.
I really like some of the guys you mentioned. I really like Miles Bridges. I think that he's quietly coming into.
That's different.
Yeah, and I actually like him on DraftKings as well. Like, the minutes have been good. He can do a lot of things on the court. He's, last two games, both over 30 fantasy points. The matchup is fine with the way that they're currently situated in Toronto. And it's at home. So I like Miles Bridges. I like Troy Brown. If there's no Beal, I think that he's an interesting play. Like, just, you'll get much lower ownership on him, I think, than you would on McRae. And we'll see. I mean, but I think that he's like just an interesting pivot there. I don't mind paying up for Ingram also. I think Ingram is going to score 50 fantasy points tonight. So I really like Ingram. And like currently he's on my first DraftKings big build. He's not on my first FanDuel one. But I also think House is interesting. And Eric Gordon, though, I keep coming back to it. It's probably not the right site for it. I like him better with the 3-point bonus on DraftKings. But he's going to explode one of these days. And without Westbrook tonight, getting back his minutes, getting those shots up, took 10 threes in the last game. Certainly a guy who should be on your list as a potential play. And yeah, I mean, that's basically all. There's the wild card guys we mentioned from the other show, but I'm not going to really get into those. I think that to narrow it down, you're talking between those 8 guys. And I'm personally leaning, the Ingram and Giannis with one of Troy Brown, Miles Bridges, and Anunoby, Daniel House. That's sort of the route that I'm going, and Eric Gordon, excuse me. Those are the guys, but mostly it's going to be, I think Anunoby is the best play.
So he's projecting, at least what I'm looking at, to be the highest owned by a little bit. Then you're down to Ingram, Giannis, Gordon, House, Bojan, Hayward, the guys I mentioned. Mm-hmm. The guys that we mentioned, the low-owned kind of darty throws would be Bridges and
but it's not. That's what's great about Bridges is it's really not a dart throw. You've got a guy playing 35 minutes a night who is put up 30-plus in back-to-back games. Had they had the one blowout game against Cleveland, throw those numbers out. So 3 out of the last 3 games that he's actually played in, like they played in that wasn't just the one weird one with the minutes. He's put up 33, 32, and 36, and he's 5,100. That's a terrific tournament play. This is a great example of a guy who we're getting way, way lower ownership than we should be on, especially if we're going to commit to some of these other guys. Because I think he gets to 35 just as much as these other guys do, if not more than Anunoby. Sure, he costs a little more, but like as opposed to House and Gordon, that's what we want out of them, but we need them to go off. We don't need Bridges to go off. We just need him to be himself.
Yeah, and some of these other guys down the list, I mean, if you end up stacking some of the games we talked about in the other video, like if you go after the Chicago-New Orleans game for whatever reason, I mean, that's when you could throw guys like Etuan Moore in, you know what I mean, stuff like that. But on their own, it's not exactly the greatest play in the world. But then we already talked about Gordon, and yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah, I think you side with Gordon in that situation just because the number of shots he's going to get up tonight.
Yep.
They're going to trap Harden. Gordon, don't be surprised if Gordon takes legitimately 15 3-pointers. That's not an exaggeration.
Sounds good to me. I have
him. Great. He's the other one. I mean, you got him, and then maybe not. He was not. I don't think he'll average 15 here, but I think he's got a shot at getting there. All right, so we've got a really interesting power forward position, and I guess it really depends on what kind of build you're doing. So, what are your thoughts over here?
This reminds me of yesterday because was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. It reminds me of the Harry Giles situation from yesterday, in that there was a standout value at power forward, but he wasn't as highly owned because there were just a lot of other really good options at power forward on Fanduel. And today it seems very similar because Michael Porter Jr., assuming that, things work out the way people expect. I mean, if he starts or he gets a lot of minutes or whatever, he's going to project to be an incredibly amazing play. And he's going to be on DraftKings, I think he's going to be just insanely popular. But I think on even though he's projected to be a really, really good play also on FanDuel, his ownership is going to be a little lower because, I mean, there are some decent plays here. So I'll just kind of read off a couple of them. Like Derek Favors looks to be really pretty good here at 6,900. I mean, kind of more expensive guys, but John Collins in the Atlanta game. And then you could play more value with PJ Tucker at 4,200. And then if you want to go where we kind of went at DraftKings at the end was Draymond at 5,700 in that late game. So, and then even you go down a little further, as far not down necessarily, but as far as value goes, you can play Surge again if you want to. But my point is that Porter Jr., he projects to be a really, really good play, but it's not as if you need him. You know what I mean? So it cuts both ways. If he ends up being kind of lower owned, then the rest of your build, if you want to do something like Giannis and Luka and Harden or whatever, then Porter becomes like necessary and not bad. I mean, he's projected quote unquote only 20%, on FanDuel just because there are like other options.
Okay, I'm gonna name a guy who I guess I had to double check this because I really don't realize how good he's been. I think he's actually going to end up being pretty popular on FanDuel, which is weird, but not a guy we think of for DFS as much as we probably should. And I just want to read. So these are non-blowout games that LaMarcus Aldridge has played in since he came back from injury on December 6th. And this was including his first game back from injury. His fantasy point totals on FanDuel. 38.
Tell me who they played against.
This is going to be a lot of games. 38 against Sacramento, 34.5 against Cleveland, 39.9 against Phoenix, 48.4 against Houston, 49 against Brooklyn, 66 against Memphis, 35 against Dallas, 48 against Detroit, 45 against Golden State, 44 against Oklahoma City. And then you have the 2 Milwaukee games, which is against Giannis, the toughest matchup. So I'm going to throw those out. So basically, we have a guy who's averaging, right around 45-ish fantasy points at 7,300 in an expected close outcome. Now, here's the problem. I don't trust the Spurs at all going east, even though they're playing well, after beating Milwaukee in an emotional game at home, and an older guy like Aldridge doesn't feel great. I'm just pointing out that he's definitely a guy we should be considering. I mean, those numbers are pretty incredible considering that a guy like Serge Ibaka, who also is in play and going to have much higher ownership, hasn't been doing anywhere near that. And he's going to be much higher owned. John Collins is another guy who's not going to be owned as high as he should, but probably will be more over here on FanDuel. 7,400 for John Collins. That's just way too cheap. Great matchup. This game is obviously full of fantasy goodness, so that's where you'd be looking. PJ Washington I'm not going to go there, but he is getting a ton of minutes. And Draymond Green, just again, probably not going to go there on FanDuel. Never know what's going to happen in that situation. The weird one that I've got for you too, and I know I'm throwing out a lot of different names here. What about Maxi Kleber? Like, he's 4,400. He's put up 30 or more in 3 of the last 4 since basically we have no Dirk. He had one bad one yesterday. They're going to need size against Denver, so the minutes should be locked into, 32, 30, somewhere in around there, 30 to 34 if the game's close, which it should be. Maxi Kleber, all of a sudden, we've got a nice – like on this – over here, I think is where you want to stack that Dallas-Denver game more than DraftKings. It's a little easier to do. But you can really get some great exposure here by playing a guy like Kleber here at 4,400. I mean, that's a great price for a guy who's gotten all the minutes. And he's like 6K on DraftKings right now. And he's put up, in those games without Dirk, 32, 32, 32, and then 16 in the one bad one yesterday. On the upside of that, he also played less minutes, and they're going to need him for more minutes tonight. So Kleber might be that play. Where do you have him on the ownership projection?
Okay. I have a lot of comments on what you just said. I'm so happy you said all that. First thing I would say is that, we should always, I know that people are listening to this stuff. We should always kind of have kind of a fact check and kind of like an error section. Like the end of in the newspapers, the day after they come out, back when they used to have newspapers like 80 years ago, they had like a correction, like we meant to say this. So just to correct, we meant that Kleber is better without Porzingis, not without Dirk.
I keep doing that. I'm sorry. That's terrible.
No, that's fine. Because it's funny. I marked down the first time you said Dirk, and then you said it a second time. Second thing is that I'm pretty sure they were trying to fade Jordan McRae, not Rodney McRae. Rodney McRae was really good back when he was on Louisville. So I just want to bring that up. But the more important thing is, and this I think is really an important lesson for you guys, not being sarcastic, is when you watch content and when you hear people give their opinions, it's really important, and this is what I used to do when I first started talking with Bobby, is just write stuff down kind of like blindly. And then after that, just look at an ownership run. Doesn't matter whose side it is, and just see how that play kind of like fits within the ownership run that you look at. And that's like what I still do. Whenever Bobby starts going, what about this guy? What about this guy? What about this guy? I am literally staring at an ownership board when he goes through them. And just say, wow, because like Bobby, when he goes off and talks about this, he's 100%, from the heart. And these are what he really believes without, looking at other people's without looking what other people like. And Bobby's been doing this a long time. And when you hear these people go through some of their good plays and they happen to be low owned, you should be like a list of those guys that you should be, even if like a lot of other people don't like them, just to be like filtering them through. So I was just kind of looking at like some of the guys you kind of ran through, and just to give you an idea, just this is one ownership run I'm looking at. Like Maxi Kleba, I'm looking at it 1%. Okay, another guy, PJ Washington, 3%. Okay, and LaMarcus Aldridge, he has a name, so I'm not surprised. He's 9%. And then the funny thing is, John Collins was 27%. Okay, so I think it's really, really important that when someone talks about plays, you really think about the ownership stuff. So like for example, a guy like PJ Washington, which I know you said, well, maybe not get the name, whatever. Dude, I don't care. I mean, like the fact that you can find a nice low-owned guy, those things are very, very difficult to come by. So I would really just keep on that. So to answer your question, so Kleba is projected at 0. I mean, like 1%. PJ Washington, 0. Anything under 5, I consider 0.
Mm-hmm.
And then LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be getting some ownership, and John Collins is. I'm looking at the second most popular player on the slate as far as that position.
How about Millsap?
So Millsap, I think he's about 4%, 5%.
Wow. So there's that. I mean, that's. I'm telling you, man, if you want to get some interesting exposure to that game with some Kleber, you get Kleba, Doncic, and then you've got Millsap and Harris. I mean, you might be on.
This is perfect. Millsap is a perfect. I don't want to say not that he's the greatest thing in the world, but pivot off of what's going to be a much higher owned PJ Tucker. For example,
how about a much higher owned Michael Porter, who's $500 cheaper,
exactly.
Sure. But Michael Porter, we're implying the minutes are going to be there. We know at least that Millsap's going to get 24 to 28 minutes in a pretty good game environment with more usage because we're missing Barton.
Hey, I had another guy from the Denver game I wanted to bring up. I don't know if we missed him at power forward or whatever it is, and I don't know if he's going to be also a beneficiary of those of what's name being out or whatever.
Jeremy Grant.
But yeah, Jeremy Grant, the min price.
Yeah, he's interesting to me.
He's also 3,200 on DraftKings, by the way.
I think he's a better play on DraftKings because the value here isn't saving you so much from the other guys where it doesn't matter. But over on DraftKings, I think he's definitely in play as a speculative play. Like he could end up getting the minute. It would not surprise me one bit if he got more minutes than Michael Porter and put up a bigger game.
Yeah.
But I do like Porter, so it's hard for me to say because I think when Porter breaks, like Jeremy Grant might get you to 25, 30 fantasy points. Porter's got a chance to get you to like 45. I mean, he's got that in him. This guy is super talented. All the word around him is that he's one of the most gifted guys in the NBA. I just want to see him play. So maybe I'm biased.
Okay, so all right, good. So let's finish up and let's go to center. And I'm going to start again. I happen to have the ownership projections pulled up first, so let me do that first. I have, again, this is whenever, but
there's a lot.
I have actually Capella being a just huge amount of chalk. I see actually 33%.
Yeah.
And the next highest guy being like 11. So I mean, I don't think it's going to add actually if I add all this stuff up, but Capella's he's projecting to be a really, really great play, which is why it makes sense. But he's projecting to be also the most popular. So what I would do is I look at the next two guys, like assuming this is accurate, assuming that one guy's 30 and then there's a drop to say 12% for the next guy. For example, I'll look at, as far as my projections, my values go, like what the next couple of guys are and how much worse they are than Capella in a situation like this, and see if it's worth that getting that drop in ownership. So the next two guys, it's so funny, it seems pretty whatever. The next two guys seem pretty close between Gobert and Vooch. And, Gobert certainly has game script issues, that's for sure. Especially with Randall out. I mean, that's serious game script issues, meaning that I don't know how many minutes he's going to get. And he's playing is he playing a back-to-back too? No, he's not playing back-to-back. But no. In any case, it's going to be tough for him to get enough minutes to smash, I think. And then there's Vooch, who, projects to be just as good. And then if you wanted to drop a little further, and I don't know if you're going to go here, you could go to Jokic, and then you're doing stuff like Alex Len and Mitch Robinson and stuff like that. So I'm curious to hear where you're at on this.
So the interesting thing about the Gobert blowout risk, I just want to point out, like they do a weird thing with his minutes. Like he basically always plays the same number of minutes in pretty much every game. So maybe his low end is like 34 or 33. but he's pretty much in there. He doesn't really go much higher or lower, depending on unless it's like a blowout or foul trouble. I'm sorry, unless it's like overtime or foul trouble. I agree. Capella is not the obvious. Like you play cash games, you play Capella. Like it doesn't even. I don't think you even think about it. I think Jokic and Vucevic are terrific tournament plays at the high end. I really like both of them, and I think that you can get them in really easily. And I mean, look, we don't know where all the usage is going to go without Barton. It's going to be game flow dependent, but like, who is going to guard Jokic on the Dallas Mavericks? You're going to have a combination of Kleba and Powell doing it. Good luck. I feel like that's a really easy play that if people aren't going to make it, just again, I'm going back to this Denver-Dallas stacking thing, and I think over here on FanDuel it just really builds out nicely. I have two extreme wild cards, especially if we don't know the situation of Marcus Morris. I think Bobby Portis is worth playing in tournaments on FanDuel. He's 3,700. If Morris is out also against the team where you need to have size, you're going to have Portis and then the other guy who I like, which is Mitch Robinson. And as bad as the matchup is against Gobert, like they both are athletic enough, and especially Portis does the one thing that would drive him crazy, and that's stepping out and shooting threes. And it's not like Gobert's the kind of guy, like Mitchell Robinson will get himself in foul trouble no matter what. But Gobert's not like the kind of guy who's going to post up and like beat you up that way. He's going to get doing a lot of other things that not necessarily going to draw the most fouls on you. So I like the idea of trying to take a shot on one of those guys. I like Mitch Robinson maybe a little bit better he's a little cheaper on DraftKings, but actually he's reasonable over here too. And I really think if you play the Bobby Portis way, you can get all three studs in your lineup very easily with other good players. And I just think it's like a really off the board thing that literally I just don't see anyone thinking of, even if Marcus Morris is out, unless somehow all of a sudden somebody projects him for like 24 or 26 minutes. No one's done that in forever. I'm telling you, he didn't play yesterday. Like, there's a chance here where Bobby Portis ends up getting minutes tonight, and I think it's worth speculating on. I know it sounds crazy, but that's where I'm at.
Well, the other thing that I would add is if you wanted to play Mitch Robinson is as I've commented in several other of these reviews is that he is the kind of the master of blowout run. I mean, he's got a lot of his production coming in blowout run. So if you're worried about that piece of it for this game, which you have every right to be worried about, it's a very good chance. I would say very good. I don't know. There's a decent enough chance that those last 8 minutes of the game, when the game is over, he's going to be out there just doing his thing. So that's definitely an off the board type thing. What's interesting, just kind of the way this is built, right, is almost unintentionally, or maybe it was intentionally, you got this Denver thing going on in this build, right? You got Millsap and Porter and Jokic with Luka, and it's so funny. You have like 700 left that you need to kind of spend, go down. And if you have it in you to fade the Jordan McRae, for example, I mean, you can maybe get somewhere. You know what I mean? You could go. Oh God, you want to go play Kevin Huerter? Oh.
Yeah, Kevin Huerter is a great play.
I mean, if you do this, Huerter doesn't quite get there.
Yeah, you can do him. You could do a cheaper one though, and play one of the 4,200.
You could do Josh Hart, right?
I would upgrade House.
Well, if you want to do that, hold on, just for the hell of it. Let's finish.
We're really hardcore stacking this Denver side.
Oh, I mean, I don't know.
Or put Harris in there. Why don't we put Harris in there while we're at it? Get them all in there.
Where is he? Shooting guard?
Yeah.
And you're laughing, like laugh at lunch, you'd be crying by dinner. You know what I mean? Like this kid. Remember,
who we got at small forward? Let's watch that boy in.
If you're gonna get 90 points out of Luka, I mean these other guys gonna have to get. You're not gonna just need Jokic to get there. You know what I mean? You're gonna need other guys.
And they're at prices where they can all affordably get there. Like they can all get 30s if the game is a tight up and down game.
Look at this pivot off of freaking Jordan McRae, Troy Brown. Let's go. I mean, or if you could go with 0% Miles Bridges. I mean,
that's kind of sweet. You don't even to worry about ownership, I don't think, anymore. If this is,
I think so. Huh?
I don't think everyone's going for that hardcore of a game stack. But
sure.
And by the way, if you want to mix it up, you put Kleba in Millsap's spot, and that way maybe you get something a little different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same exact price. So A lot of ways to go, man. That's really interesting. Okay, well now that's a great build. So there's the winner. And by the way, there was no colluding on this. This is Sheets built this on his own.
It's great game theory, right? So if I already show you that I put this in, it's bad value for anybody else to put it in. You know what I mean? Because you're naturally just duplicating, and that's bad value. So I've just completely game theory you guys all out of the winning lineup.
I don't want a bachelor situation where when this wins all the money tonight that we're going to be getting in trouble.
You know what? I'll take the heat. How about that? If this thing wins, we'll get so much more publicity from all the tweets. I'll eat it. I'll even give back the first place. How about that?
All right, man. I love it. All right. Well, there's a great outline for tournament lineup for you guys. So we're doing it all for free. Please just give us the like, the thumbs up. And we look forward to catching up with you guys soon. I'm going to get this one loaded, and hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever is your thing. We will be there to answer your questions. Thanks, guys.